know that your teacher is Mother she does have something set up for you. Thank God for another Wednesday evening. I understand, I know it's cold outside. I know that there is the wintry mix that's kind of looming over us. I think the worst of it is going to come in maybe later on around 10, 11 o'clock tonight, which will hamper things early in the morning. So we'll have to exercise some caution if you're going out. But we're going to go on nonetheless. We'll try to finish up 139 if we get to that. And if we finish it, then we'll go ahead and dismiss. And then we'll go on and get off the road and go home.
Yes.
But there's so much good stuff in this 139th chapter that if we don't finish it, I'm still not going to be disappointed in that, because there's so many things and it's so relevant, especially when we get into verses 13 and starting with that. So just kind of hang on with that, and notice we had said on last Wednesday, if we were to label it, we would label it as the inescapable God. And when we go into it more, we're going to understand why it's being labeled that, the inescapable God. We already established that he knows everything, and he's everywhere at the same time, and the two has to work together. If he's going to know everything, then that means he has to be there everywhere at the same time so he can see everything. And that's going to lead us into an even deeper place, from a very deeply spiritual point, and a very, if I could say it like this, scientific point of view. And keep in mind now, David was not in a place or time where you had Duke Hospital, UNC Chapel Hill, Rex, and all of the advanced medicine and all of the things that we think that makes us so smart. He was not in a place where that kind of stuff existed. So that's going to be extremely amazing to us if we really take it to that depth, and that's what we're going to try to do. So we're going to go ahead and jump back in. I think we stopped. We were talking about the wings of the morning, verse 9, and then even in verse 10, I think we actually stopped there, where we were talking about how fast light travels. And David says literally, and again, this gives you that scientific stuff. He has no idea that light travels in excess of 186,000 miles per second. That's fast per second. So in that talking, light have just gone. And he says, if I could get on the wings of the morning, the light of the sun going from east to the west, by the time I get to the farthest part, God, you're already there. And once I get there, in verse 10, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. So when I get to the place where it looks like I'm going to just keep right on going, God says, no, you're not. I'm going to stop you right there, and you can't go any further. And there's a reason why he keeps doing this and just stressing this point, and metaphorically speaking in such a way that he's trying to get you to see that there is nowhere. This is an inescapable God. There is nowhere you can go to get out of his sight. Now, he also does this. Look at verse 11. He says, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. So after he talks about going to the utmost parts of the sea, after he talks about making his bed in hell, rather, after he talks about ascending up to heaven, then he comes back and he brings it into another perspective. It's dark outside. And if someone was so inclined, if they tried to hide around the corner and use the darkness, now we have a bunch of light out there, so it would be kind of difficult, but if we didn't have all that light, and somebody was so inclined, they could use that darkness to hide us. So think about what David is saying. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me. And they didn't have street lights in his days, so don't even think about it. There was no kind of electrical light grid system or anything. He says, if I think that that'll hide me, and if I say that the day will give way, and this is where the King James English is not so good, even the night shall be light about me. Even when the light becomes darkness, and a lot of people think, okay, just wait till it gets dark. And then I can slink around and I can do what I'm going to do and nobody won't really see me. David says, not so. If it's the darkest night or if it's getting evening and you think that the light is getting ready to give way to the darkness, notice what he says in verse 12. Yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. There is no cloak of darkness that is so thick that God can't see right through it. Because basically, one is the same to him. He looks right through the dark just like he looks through the brightness of 12 o'clock noon on a bright sunny day that's 95 degrees. Doesn't make any difference. David says, I know you can see that. There's rhyme and reason to this. I want you to keep this in mind, because when we get into these next few parts, I want you to think about this. I wrote in my notes. You have to understand, you can't run from the God once you're here who created you before you got here. That's what he's literally trying to get you to understand. Now keep in mind, this is not a man who knows anything about the scientific method. This is not a man who would say to you, I've been studying chemistry or biology, or I've been studying astronomy and all that kind of stuff. This is not a man that can do that. He has no idea to the extent that we do of conception, of birth, of the point in when scientifically we say, well, this is when life begins. I want you to keep all of that in your brain, because this is what messes us up. This is why, young lady, as an employee of the Department of Health and Human Services, you have a job. Because in my wife has been doing child support in one way or the other for, gosh, we were talking about the other night, over 30 years. It's a shame that you have to have a government agency to make people take care of their children. Yes. You also have all this nonsense about the different divisions and sections of Department of Health and Human Services, which pertains to children, birth, prevention, and all that kind of stuff. All of that will come into play in these verses. So I want you to look at what David says here. And again, keep in mind, once I'm here, there's no way I can run away from the one who knew me before I was. Oh, wow. That is just absolutely amazing to me. And I think because we're so smart, that's the reason why we dismiss stuff and we act like, well, it doesn't matter, because then we think we can play God. Here's why we shouldn't do that. And I keep stressing this, and I'm going to emphasize it from now to the time we stop. We're verse 13 of 139, young lady and young man. Verse 13, David says, after I have established, I can't run from him, I can't hide from him. He says, for thou hast possessed my reins. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. Oh. You made me. And listen to the extent in which David talks about that. And again, he knows nothing. He knows absolutely nothing to the extent that we know of conception, the whole process of gestation, the different trimesters. Look at this. We have a young lady, bless her heart, and she is right there at the doorstep of getting ready to give birth. Well, you're going to a doctor now on a regular basis, because the closer you get, the more they're going to check. And from the beginning, they could go back and say, well, as best we can tell, conception began at this point. David said, no, it didn't. It did not. It absolutely did not. When you look at this, he takes this to a point. You covered me in my mother's womb. If you have a, let's see, what is this translation? It's a King James translation, but it goes into a different type of translation, or it translates words in different ways. When you look at covered in your King James Bible, is there a little T next to it? Or no? Okay, in the one that I'm using here, there's a little T next to covered, which it translates it as weaved or knitted. Okay. He literally saying God was working that out, and he was designing us and structuring each one of us the way that he intended us to be. Notice what he said. You possessed my reins. You covered me in my mama's womb. I've said this over and over and over again. We don't even know what David's mother's name was. There is a Jewish tradition that identifies her as Navita, the daughter of Ahadiel. That's just a tradition. We don't know, because the Bible does not specifically say that this was David's mama's name. Tony and I took our grandbabies to see the movie David. It's a good movie. If you want to take children, it is an absolutely good movie. There's a lot of authenticity to it, but Hollywood is Hollywood, so just be ready for that. But for the most part, it's really good. Now, I believe, as I think about it, they actually called his mother's name Navita. I don't know, because there's nothing in the scriptures that says that. Again, this is tradition, and I think the reason why he's not mentioned is just for this reason, because David is literally saying, before my daddy knew my mama, God already knew my name. So it was insignificant what my mama's name was, because before my mama came, before my daddy Jesse arrived, God already knew so much about me. He knew who my mama was, and he knew who my daddy was, even though he doesn't give her name in the scriptures. That's amazing. Especially when we start sitting around talking about, well, we know when life actually begins at the time of conception, or when the embryo gets to this state, or God says, no, you don't. You don't have a clue. Because way before that took place, I already knew. I already had it in my mind. I already knew. And watch this now, because David does not have all that we think we have. But he stops in verse 14 and he says, wow, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Hallelujah. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Now notice, he took this to the point of his soul. Now, if you're going to have any kind of connection with God, it better be in your soul, deep down in your heart. Stop trying to do a physical thing with God before your heart is engaged. Because if your heart is not engaged, you are not going to have any kind of connectivity with God. If your heart is not engaged, you are not going to be led to write what David writes concerning conception. And I keep doing that because I want us to really just beat down on this thing and see how crazy we have become in the way we do stuff and act like we know better than God. He says this. Now again, my soul is connected and my soul is engaged in this. This is the reason why the Holy Spirit would lead him to write these things. Look at verse 15. He says, my substance was not hid from thee, when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest part of the earth. My frame wasn't hidden. Again, before my daddy knew my mama, you knew my name. You knew who I was. You knew what I was going to be. Yeah. You knew where you were going to find me. You knew what you were going to accomplish in me. You understood that I was going to be a king before anybody even thought of who I am. Have you ever heard the expression when people are talking about their birthday or whatever, and children are talking or people are talking, and they'll say, yeah, I was just a thought in somebody's mind. You ever heard that? You ever heard that? Before I came into being, I was just a thought in the back of somebody's mind. You have no idea how much truth there is to that. Because in God's mind, way before we were ever born, he already knew. He already knew. This is absolutely amazing when you look at what David is saying here. It was not hid from you. What was made in secret, because when you think about it, when you think about consummation, you think about conception, most often, nobody knows. That's why they say, as best we can determine, this is when it was. That's the reason why we can project that you're probably going to give birth the end of February or 1st of March or whatever they told you based on we think. David said, God wasn't thinking. God knew. Right down to the second, even though it was in the secret, darkest, lowest parts of the earth, he's already established you can't go so far. You can't go to hell. You can't go to heaven. You can't take the wings. You can't go nowhere where God haven't already been. So again, watch this. That means if you can't run away from him when you get here, you have to understand that he knew you before you got here. So that's the reason why you can't run away from him. Now you're physical, because before you even came into a physical being, he knew you in his mind to the exact second when you were first going to come into being. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And it should teach us something. How in the name of God do you think you can run away from him?
All right.
When he was the one who actually was there and knew the precise second that you were going to come into being, because watch this. Watch this. Look at verse 16. If you think that was something, look at verse 16. How do you know that then, God? Well, look at verse 16. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfected or unformed, and in thy book of my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. So if you think that was amazing, here's what he just said. God in his book already had your days numbered even before they came into existence.
Oh my God.
Wow. Wow. So you want to talk about a God who knows everything. Here David says in his book. Now if you use Matthew Henry will kind of go off a little bit. And I don't particularly agree with what he says. He would make you to believe that when you start talking about the members and how they are all written in the book and the continuance of them as they were fashioned, he would say, well, God made sure that when you were born, you had all 10 fingers. When you witnessed the birth of your child, what was one of the first things you did? Have you got all 10 fingers? Your first child, did you say, have she got all 10 toes? And you were looking around, and okay, and you were examining her when they put her on your chest and said, here's your daughter. And that was one of the first things you did. You did it, and you did it, and you did it, and all of us did. Looking around, because the first thing I said when I saw my son was, I got a healthy, strong, big boy. He was 9 pounds, 10 ounces, biggest child in that whole delivery section at that time. But what I wanted to know is everything in place? Well, Matthew Henry would have you say this unperfected or unformed in his book, your members, and we're going to talk about the members of the body this coming Sunday if the Lord gives us time. All of those body parts are in place. Well, I would beg to differ with that. I would say that book was written, and all my days, even before they existed, he already had them. Which takes me again back to that question of when life begins, which is what gets us in trouble when we start talking about abortion rights. And we start talking about, well, a woman has the right to do and all that. No, she don't. And I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. I'm going to get in so much trouble tonight, it ain't even funny. And everybody who hears this, who disagrees with this, because it's my body, I have the right. We just proved to you that your body exists because God said you're going to be. Way before anybody ever had any notion that you were even going to be born. Because again, David says, before my daddy knew my mama, you knew my name. So we don't get to supersede God by thinking, because we have determined that we know when life begins. You have no idea, you do not, because we just proved it does not begin when the consummation takes place. Life begins in the mind of God. And he says, I knew you before your days ever started. I had all of that numbered before it even began. That's the reason why if we can't give life, we have no business trying to take life. So all the justification that we come up with to say, well, it's her right, and we're going to get into all the intangibles about, well, she might have been, or she might be in dire straits as far as her health, the baby may be in place, or misshapen, and we know this to be true. That's the reason why I take exception to Matthew Henry saying that means all the body parts, because we know children that are born, and they are born with underdeveloped lungs. They are born with underdeveloped hearts. Some of them are born, my grandson, without a kidney. So it can't mean all of those parts are in place as we understand. Well, that's another reason why, as we look at this, without the scientific technology that we have and the so-called sense that we think we possess, David is saying it doesn't matter. God had this worked out, and it was in his mind, which means that God also knows if a child is going to be handicapped,
All right.
deformed, or in a place where that a sickness is going to prohibit him or her from living the number of days that we think they're supposed to live. But again, because we don't have life in our hands,
All right.
we have no business trying to pretend that we can play God and determine, well, this life is not a life worth living. That ain't what the book just said.
All right. All right. Come on.
And I told him, I'm going to get in trouble. I ain't even worried about that. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble because there are those who, well, you don't have the right to tell me what I can do with my business. I do not, but God does. Because God made your body. And he knows why it was made. And let's back up a little bit. Here's David saying, as he stopped and he was pondering this, all of a sudden in verse 14, he stops again and says, I will praise thee, for I am fearful and wonderfully made. Marvelous. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knows right well. So the born-again believer would never stand and question God, no matter what the doctors and the prognosticators say in their findings, if this is going to happen or that's going to happen. The believer knows, because God hath formed me and shaped me, he's also began my time and he's ended my time. And it's not my business how I get here or how I leave. Then I will accept what God does and leave it alone. But because we're so smart and we think we know so much, we can say, yeah, but preacher, what if it was your son? I would have said to God, thy will be done. And if I had lost him because of some physical or mental handicap, or he had been limited, I would have said, you know what? Thank you for the time that you gave me. We do it all the time at funerals, and we never give a second thought that as God understood that I had written out the days, because again, look what he said. Your eyes did see my substance, yet being unformed or imperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, as yet there was none of them. So you knew my days before they ever started.
All right.
So if I can accept it from a 90-year-old that God knew their days, then why do I think that I can play God and say, no, I'm going to terminate this because this is not going to be a good life? When God says, well, but I knew their days. As limited as you may think they are, and as unfair as you may think it is, I knew this, and you don't get to play God and take that away from that unborn child. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble. But you know what? It doesn't matter. This didn't come from Matthew Henry. This didn't come from HarperCollins. This came straight from God, right out of the book. I did not get this from any study guide.
All right.
That is straight from the book, and it's called Revelation. Not the book, but God saying, this is what I was talking about. This is what I meant, and this is what gets us in trouble. And at some point in time, this country and all the rest of the folk, the civilized nations as we call them, who routinely kill babies because we don't think that holds to us. Because we think we should have the right to do what we choose to do. And the millions of children that have been murdered because of that. Hang on now. I'm going to get in trouble. Yeah, well, preacher, you just touched on it a little bit, but what if the mama's life is in danger? Do you not know that God knew? If that be the case, do you think that God didn't know that that's the way she was going to die? Were you so cold? That's the hardest, most callous, uncaring thing I've ever heard in my life. It's right here in front of you. If he has numbered your days, and he knew them before they started, before they even came into existence, he already knew you're going to be born at your birthday, at the time of day. He knew how many health issues you were going to have. He knew exactly what you were going to run into. Is it fair then for me to say, or is it right then for me to say, well, God, that's not fair because look what I had to go through. But look what he did along the way. And we're going to get to that as well. Look what he did along the way. Because once you said, okay, I'm with you, God. I'm on board. He said, okay, good, walk with me. Because here's the thing. Because I know you better than you know you. I knew you when you were out acting the fool.
Come on now.
And I knew you when you were getting ready to get converted. I knew in the between time what sickness lie in your what. But see, once you got with me, and my soul knows right well, you also understood something. You ain't leaving till he's ready. You ain't leaving till he's finished. So we have no business then to come back and say, well, that's not fair because. You can put all of the causes you want to in there. Every medication you take, you can say that's not fair because. You can do that all day long. But then when you come back and you say, wait a minute, before I was even perfected, when I was unperfected, when I wasn't even completely formed,
all right, and
you wrote in the book, you wrote in your book when I was going to start, even before it started. So that means you also have to know when it's going to end and everything in between.
Yes.
So when I go back again and I watch the way doctors look and they say, well, ma'am, I just wanted to let you know your child is going to be born with spina bifida and his quality of life is going to be blah, 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 so here's what we recommend. Who made you God that you get the opportunity to say you're going to terminate that because it's in their best interest? And David has no idea. He has no idea, according to our medical standards, how all that unfolds. But he says, I'm going to praise you because I am wonderfully and marvelous. Let me read it like this. He says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works. Now, when you say the works are marvelous, and my soul knows that, then that leaves no room for me to sit and criticize God about what I think is unfair. And then turn around and justify the killing of millions of innocent children. Yeah, but their quality of life has nothing to do with anything. Because let me tell you about quality of life. Let me tell you about quality of life. Look at Psalm 39. We did this already. We do this at funerals. And I told you then, this ain't got nothing to do with funerals nearly as much as it does living right now. When you look at Psalm 39, verse 4 and 5, look what he says. Look what David says. Are you there? Psalm 39, verse 4. He says, Lord, make me to know my end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail, how frail I am. Life in its best state is a life of frailty. We don't get to determine, well, that one's going to be more frail. You could walk out of here right now. You could walk out of here right now, and before you get to your car, God says, I'm going to show you how frail life is. It's like a vapor. You're here today, and you're going tomorrow. It's like a flower. You're standing up beautiful in the morning, but by the evening you have wilted, and you're gone. You're like a bubble on the water. You little fellas don't know anything about this. One of the things we used to do as entertaining, when it would rain real hard and we had nothing to play with, we would watch the raindrops when they would hit and the water would start to stand and big water bubbles would form with those raindrops hitting the water. And we would watch those bubbles as the current would take them down, and we'd watch and see how long it would be before they would burst. And he teaches us to know this is how frail life is. It's like a bubble on the water. We were entertaining ourselves, had no idea at the spiritual ramifications of what this says. But then we think we're so smart, we can tell God, yeah, but we can fix this. You can fix what? How can you fix what God does? Then you have the gall and the audacity to look up to heaven and say, you made a mistake. Oh my heavens. That's what we do. That's exactly what we do when we are so pretentious that we act like I can go back and fix, correct, alter, or change what you did because you made a mistake. Are you kidding me? You ain't gonna read that Matthew Henry. That's just plain old what's right in front of you. And it says, according to David, he says, make me to know how frail I am. Look at verse 5. Behold, thou hast made my days as a handbreadth, and my age is even as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. That word Selah means stop, pause, think about it, and consider what I just said. In your best state, you are altogether vanity. Your life, your days, a handbreadth. We've done this before.
All right.
You want to know how long you're going to live? Hold up your right hand, take your pointer on your left hand, go at the base of your right hand, go to the farthest point of the longest finger on that hand. There you go.
Sure.
That's it. That's how frail your life is. And don't be mistaken. Do not get it twisted. God already knew that, because accordingly, he said, I had already numbered your days before they started. So it's amazing how we think we're so smart and we don't know anything. And we are so defiant that we listen to the devil tell us crazy stuff, and then we go out and we just follow it. Well, we know when life began. No, you don't. You have no idea. And medical science would tell me you are an absolute idiot. Pediatricians, gynecologists, they would tell you, you're just stupid. You're just a stupid, babbling, old, crazy man. No, I'm looking at what the Word of God says in front of me.
Right.
And David just said, in the secret place, the farthest, the place where nobody had no idea, you were right there. And you knew it before that ever took place. You knew my name before Robert and Dixie ever got together and had the third son of the whole group of 9. I knew that much about you. So how do I then turn around and tell God, no, I know more than you do? And I can fix, because you messed up.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the same crazy stuff when you start talking about homosexuality. I was a man born in a woman's body because my parts are all messed up. No, wrong answer. Wrong answer. What you have literally done is looked up to heaven and told God, you made a mistake. Because you put a man in a woman's body, or a woman in a man's body. And David says, which if it happens with him, has to happen with me too. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelous are thy works. So again, if we accept that as truth, then we have to say, God messed up. And bless your heart, little fellas. All day long, all 3 of you, you're in a school system now where the teachers would tell kids, if you got any doubt, come talk to me and I'll counsel you and I'll help direct you in the way you should go, because I get it. You're a little girl trapped in a boy's body. Or you're a little boy trapped in a girl's body. Are you losing your mind? Yes. Yes, you are. Because that is an absolute defiance of what David says here. Because God is the author of all of that. He started it and he finishes it. All the intangibles that goes along with it, we have to understand, we deal with it because God already knows about it. Now let's go back. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to this. He has fashioned me, and he did, and he knows all about it. And he understands my days and all that kind of stuff. Again, when we start talking about, when we're looking at abortions and all that kind of stuff, the question again, when life begins, so we can do it so it's not really taking a life. Well, we just told you, there ain't no truth to that. None. I don't care if they go back and say, okay, here you've got a single cell, and here you've got another single cell, and here you've got the consummation of those 2 single cells, a male gamete and a female gamete, an egg and a sperm, and they come together. Now they're not 2 separate ones. They come together and they become one. And immediately they start to go through the process of mitosis and all that, and all the additional building of the cells and all that kind of stuff. Well, here's what. We're so smart, we can determine at what time, and we can say the exact point where this actually becomes a life. Who do you think you are? Who do we think we are? I'm going to get in trouble. The scientific community would say that's a babbling old fool. That's exactly what they would label me as. And say, well, we have scientific proof. And they use words like zygotes. And they use words like fetus. And they say, well, this is when life actually began. And David just told you, before my daddy ever knew my mama, you knew my name. So you cannot go back and say, this is the point that life begins, because in God's mind, he said, but no, I already know you. I already know you way before any of that took place. So you can't come back and counterbalance and say, but we're smart enough to figure out when we have labeled it at so many weeks. That's when we determine. So up to that point, we can legally say we didn't commit murder. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Where do you get that kind of authority to override the God of the universe? Because this is the exact same order in which from the beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, he did it in a different way. Where he literally said, here is life, I'm the giver, and if you take it, then I'm going to punish you. Because if you take a man's life, if you spill a man's blood, you are going to be held accountable. And there's no question as to how he did it, because he tells us, this was in my mind, this is how I did it. We don't even know how procreation would have happened if Adam and Eve had not fallen in the Garden of Eden. We do know after they did, this is what he said, be fruitful and multiply. And we also understand that he gave that wedding bed, because he said it's holy and undefiled, and if you do it accordingly and do it like I tell you, you won't have a single child that I don't know who they are, that I don't know their name, that I don't know when they're going to be conceived, because I knew them before you even knew each other as dating partners. So who do we think we are? Then we can come back and say to God, well, you messed up and you made a mistake. That's the reason why he was so meticulous in saying, how can I run from him now that I'm here? When he knew me days before my days ever started. So if I couldn't run from him whenever I was just a thought in his mind, what makes me think I can now physically get away from him and he don't know everything that I do?
Yes, sir.
Oh my Lord. So that the darkest night and the most extreme circumstances and the farthest place I can go to get away from where everybody knows me by name. And nobody is going to recognize my face. And nobody can't call me and say, Taylor. Nobody can do that no matter how far I go. I got news for you. God can. So wherever you go to, and no matter how inconspicuous you are and unknown you are to the natives around, God says, I know you. Because I knew you before you were. And I numbered your days before you were, before they even started. That's amazing, isn't it? Especially when you hear all the time, all the reason and the logic. Well, preacher, that's all fine, well, and good. But again, what if that child is sick? What if she was raped? What if it was incest? Well, yes, those are terrible and awful things. But God said, I knew that too. So do you then now kill an innocent life because of a sinful occasion? Is that what you're telling me? Because think about it. There's probably people that you know. Had that happened, you wouldn't know them. Because they would have been terminated before you got to know who they are. And how about this? One of them might have served as your best deacon. But you'd never know that if they were killed, because this was the reason why we justified the termination. But see, we don't think like that. Because we don't consider that God already knew that. As awful as it may be, there's always alternatives. Well, I just can't deal with the fact that I was violated, and every time I look at this child, it reminds me of me being violated. Then give them to a family or a husband and a wife who can't have children, and put them in a loving home where they can be nurtured and cared for. and reach the potential that God says before your days started. I knew them before they ever even began. So do you think then that that becomes a justifiable reason? Well, God, you couldn't have seen that coming. I beg your pardon.
Okay.
I see everything.
Yes, sir.
And I know everything. So again, this is the reason why he took so much time to say physically, how can I even pretend to think that there's any way that I can go that he doesn't know and he doesn't see? So if that be the case, he knows all about that. He understands every single bit of it. But you can't take a wrong and then do another wrong and expect a good to come out of it.
Yes, sir.
Can't do it. You cannot do it. But in our minds, we think we're so smart, we can justify it and say, yeah, but that's just so cruel and inhumane. And that opens the door for all the rest that says, okay, just have at it. And for whatever willy-nilly reason you come up with, the millions of babies that have been killed, somebody gonna have to stand before God and say, this is why I did it. And he's gonna say, but this is why I told you not to do it. Any questions or comments? We don't think that way, do we?
No, we don't.
We don't. We can justify anything in our own minds that we do. Yes, sir.
Well, first, I thought you was talking about if anybody had, if when like a few raindrops on the car window at your house, it races. But that went to my second question. Do you think life is like a race, or not a race to other people, but not necessarily, but like a race, like you know how it starts and it might be slower or faster according to your own person?
Logan's asking the question for those of you who are connected with us remotely. Now, you help me out. You thought I was talking about the windshield. Well, I'm not. I'm talking about in the old house when the rain would hit and we didn't have gutters and it would literally come down on the side and the bubbles would come up and we'd watch them as they broke apart. His next question was, do you think life is a race? Well, let's look at what one of God's best apostles said. I have finished my course. Let's go to Timothy and see it, and I'll read it just like it is, and it'll answer your question, Logan. Because yes, life is a race. It is a race to be run. It is a race to be finished. And it is a race that we should make sure that we are completely engaged in. If I go to 2 Timothy, I'll find it. But yes, that's a very good question. Okay. If you look at the 4th chapter of 2 Timothy, this answers your question, young man. Life is a race.
Yes.
This is what Paul is saying to Timothy. And I'm looking at verse 5, but you do well to read from verse 1 right on down. He says, be watchful thou in all things, enduring afflictions, do the work of evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. For I am now ready to be offered. And the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. I have run my race. Yes, life is a race. And he also says this to the church at Corinth. It's not given to the strong or the swift, but he that endureth to the end. So yes, it is a race. And David here makes it plain. God says, I know what you're going to encounter in that race. I know what pitfalls there are. I know everything that goes along with it. So please, as we illustrated, don't tell me it's unfair. Even for a young child who might be born with a handicap, instead of terminating him, let him run the race that God has before him. Well, it's going to cost me so much time, and okay, that's all fine, well, and good. But mamas who really love like mamas are supposed to, we see examples of mothers with children who have handicaps that the only thing that's in their brain is, as they're getting closer to the end of their life, their only concern is, who's going to look after my child? Well, didn't God give you the ability to do it all the days of your life? So do you think He's going to just leave and just completely, totally abandon? No, He's not going to do that. And if we would act like somebody that is not so smart that we can dictate to God, but we would follow God's dictates, then we would understand that as a society, we have a moral obligation to make sure that we take care of folk who can't take care of themselves. But because we are so in the way that we are, we don't even want to look at that, and we don't even want to deal with that, and we just want to move on, and we want perfection, and then when we get perfection, look what we do with it. You probably spend more time in front of a computer screen, a video game, a cell phone, and all other kinds of stuff, because I ain't got time for that. Don't in your room. I need a break. Which takes me to another old place. Because we think, well, God, you let me do my thing, and I'll do it the way I'm going to do it. And then instead of having to deal with this, because I ain't even dealing with the healthy ones, you know good and well, I don't want to hear nothing about me being tied down to one that's got to be dependent on me up to the day that I die. And then I got to be concerned about who's going to cover him after I die. So the doctor says, let's just cut that off and don't even worry about that. Let's just terminate it right now. And God says, who gave you permission to do that? That's an interesting question from a little fellow that ain't, well, how old?
I'm about to turn 10.
You're about to turn 10 years old. You're about to turn 10 years old. I wonder how many adults would look at this in the context in which we're looking at it and say, hey, preacher, do you think life is then a race, a course? Yes, absolutely. And we just determined the days and the number of the days of that course. God said before they started, I had already numbered them. So you can't come with me or come to me with anything about why you think that your reason and your logic and your intelligence supersedes what I had already in my divine mind set forth and knew was going to happen. Isn't that amazing? 10-year-old Logan Lassiter.
Praise God.
I got another question.
You got another question? Well, please have at it.
And I hear a lot of people saying that they're like both. So they say, I feel like you can't really be both. So if you say, so somebody says that, one of my friends saying, like, if he knows what's going to happen, but he's trying to let us change, but he already knows if you're going to change and how you're going to change, and if you are going to change and stuff, or if you don't change. So yeah, so I feel like that's both, because they're trying. They say he's trying to let them change, but he already knows if you're going to change or not.
So Logan is pointing out the fact that God knows us, and whether we're going to change for the good or the bad. He already knows. And He does. He gives us the ability to make that decision. He is never going to twist your arm and say, okay, Logan, I'm going to make you come to me and get saved. He doesn't do that. He gives you the option, but He does know whether you're going to receive that or not. Which again goes back to that whole notion of David saying, you know so much about me, you know my thoughts are far off. Before I ever think them, before they ever get to where I am, you already know what I'm going to think before it catches up to where I am. So if He knows that much about me, He also knows whether I'm going to accept His offer of grace or not. He also knows if I'm going to try to use my logic to determine if I'm going to change again when we start talking about homosexuality and all that kind of stuff. If I'm going to try to determine within myself, I'm going to change my biological makeup. He already knows that too. He knows every single thing about us. So we have no ground to stand on at any point to say to God, I'm going to fix what you didn't do so good. He knows that. He already knows everything that you think. Look at what He said early on in these first 6 verses. You have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down, you know when I get up. You understand my thoughts afar off. You have compassed me about. You are acquainted with all my ways. There's not a word in my tongue that you don't know it altogether. You have beset me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, and I cannot attain it. I don't know how you know it, I just know you do. I don't know how you get all of this, I just know you do. That's the reason why he's building this thing all the way up, so that ultimately he's going to say, but for the wicked, you're going to die. Because before you were ever in existence, God knew you. When you came into being, you can't run from him. You can't hide. You can't think nothing he doesn't know. You can't go nowhere he hasn't been. You can't run as far as you can go and escape where he is. I just don't get this. This is too wonderful. So the only thing I can do is just stand back and say, I praise you, and I worship you, and I receive you. When we go outside of that, then we put ourselves in his place. And we can't do that. I don't care how many doctoral degrees you have. I don't care how many schools of medicine you went to. I don't care how many procedures you have developed. You don't know what God knows. You can't attain to what God has gone to. You can't be who he is and what he is. Can't do it. Cannot do it. And when the devil tried to do it, it got him kicked out of heaven and cast down to hell.
Yes, sir.
And I don't understand why humanity thinks that we can still pull one over on God. When he says, don't you fool yourself. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. That means you can't fool me. You can't deceive me. You can't pull the wool over my eyes. Ain't nothing you can do that's going to confuse me, confound me, or catch me off guard. Don't even think about it. Because if you sow it, if you think it, if you live it, then you're going to reap the consequences. And you don't want to do that. You just don't want to do that. My 10-year-old little brother. Isn't that amazing? Any other questions, comments?
Babies, just one baby. In my life, a young lady had a kid and was born ill, basically. And the doctor gave the baby 2 days to live. But the young lady's mother told me, she said, no, she did the baby ready, we can't carry her home. And the doctor gave her 2 days. And the young lady passed away last year at 34 years old. It just...
So for those of you who are connected remotely, what Deacon Williams said was he knew a young lady as he was growing up. That the doctor said of her child, I give him 2 days, or her 2 days. She lived how long? 34 years. So again, let's go back in verse 16. Before that unperfect or imperfect, unformed part of me, my being, before it even came into being, in your book, all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. So the doctor, and I have no problem with doctors saying, okay, my medical opinion, because watch this, that's your medical opinion, based on what you think you've known over the statistics that you have compiled over time. God don't have to do that. He don't have to compile statistics. He don't have to go back and look at trends, because God is the trend setter. He don't have to go back and look at what happened and say, okay, I can base all of this information, all of this data I've gathered on the fact that now we understand that this is what's going to happen. So yes, in his opinion, 2 days, but God says, no, you didn't number her days, so you can't limit her days. So kudos to Grandma who said, let me take my grandbaby home, and for the next 34 years, God proved himself to be God. Does it happen like that all the time? No. But it still doesn't make any difference, because it still doesn't negate the fact that God knew, regardless of the severity of the sickness or the infirmity or the physical or mental handicap, God still knew how many days that child was going to be here. And we don't get to tell him, you messed up, so we're going to fix it. We don't get to do that. I'm telling you. there'd be people who'd be like, you just the craziest man I ever heard in my life. Okay, that's fine.
That's all right.
But I'm telling you what's in front of you.
That's nothing.
As you're reading with me, you can see this. So then David does this. He says then in verse 17, with all that being considered, and let's go back. Dean Williams, do you remember what her name was? Doesn't matter. It's not important.
Nicole, you know Cleo's.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do know a name.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Now watch
Oh,
this.
yes.
Watch this. Look at verse 17. And if it works for David, it has to work for us because God is the same. He is no respecter of persons. How precious also are thy thoughts unto me, O God. How great is the sum of them. So what are you talking about, David? How precious are your thoughts unto me? How great is the sum of them. So even when David was going through hardships, and Saul threw a javelin at him and tried to kill him, he still says, how precious are thy thoughts unto me. Wait a second. Didn't you see him throw that spear at me? He tried to throw that spear right through my body and nail me to the wall. But he didn't say that. He said, how precious are thy thoughts unto me. So even when I'm going through, and even when it looks like things have turned their absolute worst, David said, doesn't matter. Because the good days, the bad days, the indifferent days, we even sing a song. I've had some good days. I've had some bad days. I've had some hills to climb. But you know what? I thank God. My good days. Oh my Lord, we don't listen to what we sing. We don't listen to what we sing. My good days outweigh or outnumber, whichever one, my bad days. And I won't complain. So again, and y'all sitting right next to each other. And one can say to the other, man, when I was going through, and when I had to go through this, and I won't complain. Because my good days outweigh my bad days. So I just say thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord. I heard you when you were testifying the other night. And when your family said, no, we ain't giving up on him.
All right.
He might have been beat to a bloody mess. But no, we ain't giving up on him. So David says, how precious are your thoughts. How great is the sum of them. So even on the good, the bad, or the indifferent, he says, when I go back and I try to count them, that's why we sing that song, my good days outweigh my bad days. If I try to count them, they are more in number than the sand.
All right.
When I awake, I'm still with thee. If I took a big 5-gallon bucket and I filled it up with sand, fine sand, granular sand that you could separate every grain, tell me how long you think it will be for you to count all the grains of sand in those buckets. And we're talking about just 10 buckets. But in this case, here is the God that we're going to look up and tell him, you made a mistake. You messed up. And David says, his goodness for me, the sum of his greatness toward me, his precious thoughts to me. When I start sitting down and counting them, there ain't no way in the world that I can even begin to count what the Lord has done for me. Somebody said it like this: if I could write and start writing it down, I would be writing them from now until the time I die. Ain't enough books to hold all the stuff that God has done for me. Because every day, his grace and his mercy, it's brand new. That's what he means when he says, and so when I come to the end and when I wake up, I'm still with thee. Yes, that means you're still watching me and you're still caring for me. So even when we decide, but that's going to be so terrible, David says, no, wrong answer. Because if God is with them, that makes it better. Yes. That makes it worth living, because then you understand when you're born again, no matter how bad it is, and even if what the doctor had said, you ain't going to live to see another day, you could say, you know what? Maybe so. But I've lived to see enough. Because I have lived to see the goodness of the Lord. And because of that, I know that if this is the last day on this side, I'm going to wake up one day. And just like my brother Job, I'm going to see my Redeemer. I'm going to see him for myself. I'm going to see him and not another. Because I know my Redeemer is alive. You made a mistake, God. You just don't know what you're doing. Who in the world gives us the authority or the ability to say to God, you made a mistake? You know why people do that? We're going to quit. Because they're wicked. Because they're wicked. And you can't fix it up and make it fit. It's because they're wicked. Well, maybe it was the 1230 class. I said, let's define wicked. Did I do that? Well, okay, I'll do it now. Let's define wicked. Well, wicked is a man who will kill and rape and steal and rob and just do all kinds of stuff. Those are wicked actions. And they are byproducts of a wicked man. But you know what makes him wicked? He doesn't regard God. All right. And every single one of you, if you haven't, you probably will run into a doctor who acts like he's God. I love those doctors who understand that only ability and talent that I have is because God gave it to me. All right. We have a member, and she told me quick. I always ask her, especially when they start talking about procedures they're going to have to do that they say, you might not come back. Do you know Jesus? Because if you don't know Jesus, I need somebody else. Well, you just crazy, so go get somebody else. Well, I will, because this is my body. And I understand who my God is. And if you're going to come in here pretending to be God and not regard him, then we can't work together. That's what makes a man wicked. Because look what he says. In verse 19, surely thou wilt slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, ye bloody men. I don't want to have nothing to do with you when you act like you don't know who God is. Watch this. For they speak against thee wickedly. And thine enemies take thy name in vain. They don't regard God. That's what makes a man wicked. That's why men can go out and murder and kill and say and do anything they're big enough to do. It's not the act that they're actually performing. It's the thought. It's the mindset that says, I don't have to pay attention to God. Because here's the thing. If you don't regard God, you ain't going to regard nobody else. And if you don't fear God, you ain't going to fear nobody else. And if you're not afraid of what God can do to you, then you're not going to be afraid of what anybody else can do. So you go out and do any foolish thing that you're big enough to do. And David says, I don't want to have nothing to do with you. Matter of fact, I hate them that hate the Lord. Yeah. I grieve with those that rise up against thee. Those are the ones who have the mindset, but my body belongs to me. So I can do what I want to do with it. Regardless of what you say about God, knowing when life actually began, this is my body. And I don't have to listen to what God says, so I can do what I want to do. David said, I don't have no parts with you. I don't have nothing to do with you. No, I don't want you anywhere near me. Matter of fact, I hate them with a perfect hatred, and I count them my enemies. Yes. I've told you this over and over and over and over again. The only reason why, as a born-again believer, anybody hates you is because they hate God. And the only reason why anybody is your enemy, if you're a born-again believer on that basis, in that context, is because they hate God. And they are enemy to God. That's the reason why they can't get along with you. Yes, sir, young man. You're the last question of the day.
But God says love your enemies.
He does say that. And then you have to understand, in the context in which David is saying this, he doesn't hate the person, he hates the actions. And you have to understand, you told me this a while ago. You told me that God knows if a man is going to change or not. He does. So that means when you know, and there's another apostle, the Apostle John, you're not supposed to have anything to do with people who are wicked and we could say intrinsically wicked, and they ain't going to change. Because we were all born and shapen in sin and iniquity. So we have the opportunity. But when you see people who are so hardened that they refuse to change, you don't have nothing to do with them. You still try to pray for them as long as you think there's some hope. But then John says, when they get to a point, I won't even say that you need to pray for them. Now, that's one of those spiritual discerning things. You better have your P's and Q's in order. And I would not suggest as a young man that you go out and decide that you can determine that. But as a seasoned spiritual person, you know There are people
Yes, sir.
you ain't got no business hanging around, because they have shown by their actions, by their conversation, by their lifestyle, they are not going to change. So yes, you hate everything about them. And to put it in perspective, if you look at what Jesus says in Luke 14 and 26, because this will help you, Logan. This will help you. Look at what Luke says in chapter 14 and verse 26. When you put it in perspective, when you even feel like, when you're trying to follow Jesus, if your mama, your daddy, your sister, your brother, your stuff, your things, yes, even yourself, if that gets in the way, you better hate it enough that you can move it out of the way so that you can be in touch with God. That puts it right where it needs to be. And yes, David is putting it out there just like that. Because at any time, because you remember, and this helps you out, young man, love thy enemies. You've been taught this in your children's church. Or you've heard this along the way at some point in time. When David had a chance to kill Saul, did he kill him? No. But we know Saul was chasing David, and on one occasion threw a javelin at him, and then turned around and threw a second one at him. So we know that Saul considered David an enemy. Yet when David had a chance to kill him, he wouldn't do it. As a matter of fact, he said this when the guys around him said, "This is your chance, go ahead and kill him." He said, "I will not, because he's God's anointed, and I will touch not his anointed." So even though he knew Saul had the devil, because he would play his harp and play the devil out of him for a minute.
Come on, man.
He knew he had the devil inside of him, and that's what kept him at bay, knowing I can try, but I can't be a soulmate with Saul anymore because he's full of the devil. So he's a bloody man and he's a wicked man, and I can't have anything to do with him. And I'm going to hate everything about his actions and his ways, even though I still receive him as my king, because he was anointed as the first king of Israel in the physical. So yes, you're learning something in your classes, aren't you? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. We haven't finished with that. There's still some more in there. So I won't in a hurry about whether we were going to finish it or not. It didn't make any difference, because we still got some more stuff. We're going to go there. This is a sermon that you will get eventually, because the whole church need to hear this, because that's what's got us in so much trouble. One of the very things in the political realm that we know right now is just as crazy as it can be. Well, there's just as much craziness on the right as there is on the left. And one of the things that causes the craziness on the right to continue to go forward is the craziness on the left. And one of the craziest things is what we just talked about. Because if you listen to the whatever they label themselves, the evangelical, Christian, national concern, just nonsense, garbage, all of it. Because you can dress yourself up and pretend like I'm trying to be right to make sure I'm pointing out they're wrong, when David says, no. God knows your wickedness, no matter how much you cloak it and how much you try to deceive everybody around you, God looks right through it. But one of the things that keeps this nonsense that we know as this ultra-right conservative party in place with the stupidity that they're doing is they keep pointing at the number of innocent babies that have been aborted. And they keep looking at homosexual rights that says to God, you messed up. I'm a girl. You should have gave me all my girl qualities and all my physiological girl stuff. You messed up. You stuck me as a girl in a man's body. That's why on the right, they get to do such stupid stuff, because they're constantly pulling that up. And there are enough people who look at that and go, you can't square that. You can't make that right. You can't take a little boy. How old are you, LJ? 8 years old. You can't take an 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old child, take them in an office and say, I know what you're going through. And I counsel you to do this. And by the way, you don't have to tell your parents that you're having these thoughts. And we'll let you go to the doctor, and they can talk to you about all kinds of hormone alterations and medications and all this kind of stuff. And we can take your puberty and we can just knock it right out of the wall. And we can reverse it totally so that you don't think like a little boy anymore, because we already know you're thinking like a little girl. So we can alter that. And by the way, your parents don't need to know. You are crazy. You're just as crazy as you can be to tell a child that nonsense. But again, that's what keeps some of the nuttiness on the right in place. And the devil is having a ball. Because he's looking on both sides saying, yeah, but y'all still love to be prejudiced and racist and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, but they kill babies. Yeah, well, you don't mind separating babies from their parents, and you don't mind enslaving people and do it. So y'all messed up. And the devil's going, hot dog, boy, I got this nut show going, and I got this shooting match going, and I'm having a ball because I am ripping an entire country apart because of stupidity that comes from both directions. Isn't that amazing? That's why praying people, church folk, we have so much to pray for and so much to work toward. Ain't no time for us to do anything except stay in the Word and pray to God that He will make some sense of the nonsense that we got going on, simply because we haven't acknowledged God knows everything about me. He knew me before I knew myself. He knew me before I was ever conceived. So that's the reason why when I come into a physical state, there ain't nothing that I can say, think, or do. There ain't no place I can go. There ain't no kind of activity I can embark upon that God doesn't know every single second. That's amazing. Let's go. So we'll finish up with that 139th chapter. And get ready, because we're going to preach this to the whole church at some point in time. And if you think the few people that heard me tonight are going to call me crazy, you just wait till the whole shooting match. But it's okay, because I'm crazy in Jesus. Yeah. All right, Deacon Snow, if you will, sir. I did not expect this many folk to be out physically tonight. Good job, guys. Good job. Now, be safe going home.
You the same.
And get in the house and hunker down.
Dear Lord, we thank you for another day.